Hi, this is Patrick Rocks, and this is my summary of the practice article that I read this week, titled The Effect of a Practice Checklist on Practice Strategies, Practice Self-Regulation, and Achievement of Collegiate Music Majors Enrolled in a Beginning Class Piano Course. This was written by Alejandro Cremaschi in 2012 in the Research Studies in Music Education Journal. The goal of this study was to answer two research questions. One, the primary goal was to look at the effects of using a checklist, a practice checklist, on students' levels of self-regulation, their level of self-efficacy, their level of resource management, use of practice strategies, and their ultimate final grade on a playing assessment. A secondary goal of this study was to confirm some findings in the literature, looking at the correlation between skills of a musician, such as self-efficacy and self-regulation, self-efficacy and practice strategies, and just looking for correlations between those attributes that a strong musician would need. So this study took place in at the college level, a convenient sample of 41 music majors who are enrolled in a beginning piano course or a functional piano course that was required for their major were the sample. Essentially, the group was split in half. 22 students were placed in the intervention group. The other half were placed in the control group. This was determined by the class that they were in. So the intervention group had a really simple intervention. They were given a sheet of paper that was called the practice checklist. It had a list of dates at the top. Along the left-hand side were lists of different strategies they could use to practice. Students were just asked to mark what they did in their practice. So they marked the date, they marked how much time they spent practicing, and then they also listed any of the activities that they did during their practice. They were not prescribed a practice regimen or any recommendations. This was really just to capture what students were doing when they were practicing. At the end of the course, every student completed a questionnaire that was called the MSLQ, which stands for Motivated Strategies of Learning Questionnaire. And this was used in other similar studies. And this was aiming to assess a student's self-reported levels of self-efficacy and self-regulation and metacognition. So this was what was used to conduct the correlation analysis between those attributes. So the findings of the study showed that there was a relationship between a correlation, positive correlation between self-efficacy and practice strategies, metacognition, and self-regulation, as well as resource management. This confirmed other studies that were referenced in the literature review. And an interesting note, the highest correlation that was found was between high scores on self-efficacy and final grade. And this seems to suggest that students who are more confident in their ability to learn a task or complete a task did end up scoring higher on their final assessment, which was an interesting thing to note. On the intervention, the treatment group, there was no increase in self-efficacy, and it also did not increase their score on their final exam. So those were the two important notes, that the practice tool did not increase self-efficacy. It did not increase students' performance on the actual exam. One thing that was noted was that students who did not have prior piano experience, who were in the treatment group did use practice strategies more than other members of in the sample, which was interesting to note. The biggest takeaway, the biggest correlation between the treatment group and the non-treatment group was that the treatment group indicated higher levels of metacognitive self-regulation in their practice. Essentially, this is saying that by offering this tool to students, it increased their self-reported level of self-regulation, which means that they were likely more focused during their practice time, and that this simple intervention, even with skilled practicers like music majors, did have an increase in this self-regulation, which was operationally defined as planning a practice, like thinking ahead and planning an upcoming practice, assessing how that practice is going and adjusting throughout to achieve a goal, and then reflecting on the work that was done in that practice. So that's the big takeaway from this study, that self-efficacy levels, higher they are, typically, at least in this study, showed higher grades, a higher performance on the assessment at the end of the course. Treatment group that used the checklist had higher levels of self-regulation and metacognition. The researcher does indicate that some future research could be done off of this research. One being a larger sample size, maybe not a convenient sample size. This was quasi-experimental because of the convenience factor, and because the students were already assigned to a specific group because of the class they were in. So potentially a more experimental approach could get different results. A longer period of time to study this. This was just conducted in the last 3 weeks of the class. Perhaps maybe at a different point in the semester or a full semester could give different results. So yeah, that's the findings from this research article. Thank you.